Stacy, can you give us a sense what's going on now in Japan? Where is the disaster headed, the recovery, so forth?
Well, I think we can break it down into three different areas. I mean, one, we can talk about the disaster as a whole. The other, we can talk about the nuclear sort of situation that's going on. And the third situation is about electricity and gas shortages. So first off, in terms of the disaster, I mean, the death toll keeps rising. There are search and rescue teams. There's like 15 different countries who have search and rescue teams on the ground. Access is difficult in certain parts of the Northeast in Miyagi Prefecture, but I think that people are getting help, and definitely that is happening. Apparently there are food supplies, blankets, medical supplies in the hospitals that are required, but I think that the Japanese government is doing a very commendable job in sort of coordinating those needs. Telecom Sans Frontières is also there to work out sort of the landline issues and the communication issues as family reunification becomes more important, and also in terms of the logistics of the response. In terms of the nuclear situation, as we know, there was a second reactor that exploded today. I'm not in a particular position to actually speculate about what that situation is, but we know obviously that there were the evacuations of the people in the nearby areas, and they've been told to stay indoors for now. In terms of the electricity and gas shortages, I believe that basically they were rationing both of these things, which was a smart thing to do in terms of trying to figure out how long they might have these, and wanting to really have everything available for the response efforts. I also get reports, though, first we heard over the weekend there were about 6 million households without electricity, then it went down to like 2.5. I just read an OCHA report of sort of 1.3 million households without electricity. So perhaps, they are getting some cutoffs, or actually less homes now are having to deal with that situation. I need to look into that a little bit further. It's also important to say that a UN UNDAC team, which is kind of the disaster response team that first arrives in an emergency, is on the ground in Tokyo, and they usually help the government in coordination issues. They do initial assessments, and they also put out a flash appeal so that donor governments know exactly what is needed in terms of contributions.
We've heard language like worst disaster since World War II, that it's going to take the Japanese people a lifetime to recover from this. How do you compare this disaster with recent disasters, Hurricane Katrina, the earthquake in Haiti, the earthquake in New Zealand?
Well, I was asked on Friday, actually, well, how does this compare to the tsunami of 2004? And I'll take that as the first instance, and then we can talk about the others. Obviously, the economic damages are going to be much, much higher than they were in the tsunami, just because we have a highly industrialized country. To give some sort of context, Kobe earthquake of 1995 was $134 billion to build back that city. That's considered, before this disaster, to have been the most expensive disaster on record. In terms of Katrina, it was 81 billion, or 81 to 83 billion damages estimated. When we talk about back to the tsunami of 2004, where a lot of the damage happened in sort of rural, non-industrialized places like Banda Aceh, we were down to, let me just look at the figures again because I have all of this written down. It was about 10 billion. Sichuan earthquake, 20 billion. So definitely this is above and beyond anything we've seen before. There have been some very interesting, though not necessarily coherent, studies done. The World Bank just put out a report on, kind of how long does it take for a country to build back their GDP after a disaster of even a median scale. It's usually at least 5 years, and usually involves a deficit and sort of external debt and also internal deficits. And as we know, Japan already had a large deficit, so we'll have to watch this carefully.
How's the international response been so far? Has it been coordinated? Is it helpful? Is it progressing in the right direction?
I think it is well organized. I believe that, obviously the UN and any country that wants to help Japan has to have that offer accepted by the Japanese government. From what I understand, the Japanese government is coordinating everything, and everyone is there to support them. So I believe that we're very much in the search and rescue phase. There's going to be a phase of basically collecting, identifying, and storing dead bodies, and also working out sort of water, food, medical supplies as sort of a secondary thing, shelter, and getting all those food and non-food items to victims of the disaster. And then in the next few days, I think, organizations will really start talking about family reunification and trying to figure out who is still missing and who is deceased and who has survived.
What are some of the key lessons that we hope to learn to improve our techniques in this particular disaster?
What I find very interesting on a day like today, I mean, it's nighttime now in Japan, but these search and rescue teams are going to be learning so much from each other. This is, as all the media have said, one of the most videotaped, photographed disasters of all time. Scientists are already saying that they have such a wealth of data in terms of studying tsunamis and how they move and how they hit coastlines. So I think we're going to learn a lot from the Japanese experience.
Stacy White, thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Andrew.